Welcome back to Even Tacos Fall Apart, the podcast that's all about nurturing our mental health and well-being. I'm your host, MommaFoxFire, and I am so glad you're here. Whether you're listening for support, education, or just to feel a little less alone in your struggles, this space is for you. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that March can be a rough month for a lot of people. If you live somewhere with harsh winters, that lingering cold, gray weather can really wear you down. Seasonal affective disorder is real, and even if you don't have a formal diagnosis, the lack of sunshine and warmth can mess with your mood. If you are feeling drained, unmotivated, or just off, you're not alone. On top of that, March is when life starts speeding up again. Tax season stress for those in the US, new school semesters ramping up, and for some people, the pressure to meet goals they set at the start of the year. If you're struggling, take a second to breathe and center. Prioritize yourself in whatever way you can, whether that's getting outside for a walk, setting a boundary with work, or just making sure you're eating and drinking enough. This is your reminder to check in with yourself. Today's episode is a conversation that I recorded a while back in 2021 with my guest, Victor Janzen. We talked about what it's like to live with complex PTSD, dissociative identity disorder, and borderline personality disorder. These aren't just textbook diagnoses, they are lived experiences that come with challenges most people will never understand unless they've been through it. CPTSD is what happens when trauma isn't a one-time event, but something that builds over years, often starting in childhood, although not always. It rewires the brain, making things like trust, safety, and relationships feel like constant uphill battles. DID is misunderstood by a lot of people. It's not what Hollywood makes it out to be. It's not about switching personalities on command or some kind of theatrical performance. It's a survival response to extreme trauma. And BPD is another one that gets a bad rap. It's not about being crazy or manipulative. It's about emotions that hit harder and last longer than most people can imagine. Victor doesn't sugarcoat anything in this conversation. He's real about the pain, the system failures, and what it's like to live with multiple identities. He also talks about what's helped him, like equine-assisted therapy and learning how to navigate the world with a nervous system that's always on high alert. If you've ever felt like the mental health system wasn't built for people like you, if you've been dismissed, overlooked, or misunderstood, you're going to relate to a lot of what Victor has to say. This episode is important because it's not just about struggle, it's about survival. It's about finding ways to exist in a world that doesn't always know how to support people with these conditions. If you've ever felt broken or like you don't fit into the mold of what people think mental health looks like, I hope you stick around for this one. That's enough for me. Let's go ahead and get into my conversation with Victor. I wish I had my shit together to be that fancy, but I just don't. Hey guys, how are you? Welcome to another Mental Health Monday. I'm MommaFoxFire. I am joined today by the wonderful Victor Janzen, and super excited for the conversation tonight. We're going to talk about his experiences with CPTSD, DID, BPD, and also just his experience in general in the Canadian health system. So I'm really excited to get a different perspective because I'm down in Texas and the US's health system is notoriously awful. So it'll be interesting to draw some comparisons, I think. But Victor is a mental illnesses, mental health, and addictions community reforms advocate. Outside his day job as a project manager in the technology sector, mental illnesses activism is important to him and his family, which is very familiar to me as well. He resides in Ontario, Canada, hence the Canadian health system. And his diagnoses include CPTSD, DID, and BPD, which we'll get into as well. I've got a couple of links for you. He's written an article on DID, and also if you want to follow him on Twitter, I'm going to drop that in here for you. There is a question queue open. If you have a question for our guest tonight, !Q, and type your question and then enter it, and it'll be entered into the queue for us, and we'll make sure to get to it. If I don't get to it right away, don't worry, I do see it. I will get to it. Just sometimes I try not to interrupt the flow. But Victor, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Hey, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. The Canadian lives in Canada. Bite says, I'm shocked. Welcome, Bite. Welcome, Alex. I hope you guys are doing wonderfully tonight. And hopefully this will be a great conversation. So I also know that you have 2 adult daughters and a granddaughter. What's your favorite part about being a grandparent? And how does that differ from being a parent?
Well, I was trying to think of something really funny to say here, but I mean, everyone's probably heard this before, but being a grandparent, you can give them back. That's
That is true.
that's one of the I guess that's one of the things. But I mean, I've got 2 great daughters, and it's I mean, I love my granddaughter to death. She's just a spark of life. There's so much potential, and you can just see her interested in everything and learning. She's 3, and she's just a bundle of joy. I mean, it's kind of frustrating with COVID and COVID protocols and shutdowns and all this other stuff that I really can't see her in person. But at least we can video chat. And one of the things that I'll say that's different than being a parent and being a grandparent is being a parent, you're not given a manual on how to raise kids. I mean, all the books that are out there, I don't know. For me, it's I've read a few of them when my first daughter was born. By the time my second daughter was born, I mean those books became a fire starter. Quite honest.
Yep.
And I think a lot of those books are just bullshit baffles brains, as far as I'm concerned. And I mean, I relied heavily on a lot of. Well, I didn't rely on my parents, but I relied on my wife's parents. How to raise kids, and I gotta say that coming from a household of 2 older brothers and just being around all boys all the time, having 2 daughters. Well, I don't know the first thing about girls and girl issues. So that was a challenge. And I find it quite interesting and peculiar that my whole life is surrounded by females primarily. So yeah, it's but yeah, I mean, I love my kids. I love my well, they're not kids. Sorry, I love my young adult, powerful young women, who have a sense of ownership of who they are and what they want to do. My granddaughter, who's just a spark of life. Like I said, there's so much potential there, and I'm going to do whatever I can to nurture that potential and make sure that she knows expectations of the new world that we live in. Yeah. Hopefully I answered your question.
I mean, 3-year-olds that's such a fun little age. And I'm sure it's just heartbreaking to not be able to see her right now with all the restrictions and everything. But that's fun. So you have 2 daughters and a granddaughter. And you grew up with brothers. So that's fun. See, I grew up with 2 sisters. And that was a different experience from having boys. So I've got
so you got the opposite.
Yeah, I had the opposite. Well, and so I have a non-binary 14-year-old. I have a 7-year-old son. I have a 14-year-old bonus son and a 19-year-old bonus son. And so they're just all all over the place, and it's been an adventure, that's for sure. Hey, Brian, welcome in. How are you today? So what you said that you are a project manager, right? So what do you do? What does that entail? What do you do for a living? And then what are some of your favorite hobbies when you're not working?
Well, for a living, I spend a lot of time on the phone. Even though they promote, we use like a product called WebEx. There's a video component, but I find that they upgrade my work computer. So every time I turn on any video, anything, all my resources get chewed up, and then my computer just is dog slow. And so now I just don't even use the video feature. But I mean, I work for a large telco across our country, and I've got projects in the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. Everything from telephony to digital signage to video wall installations. You name it, I get involved somehow. So it keeps you on your toes.
Yeah. Yep.
But predominantly as the word, project manager. Yeah, I spend a lot of time filling in project management schedules. It's true what they say. As project manager, we have our check boxes and we want to know dates.
Yeah. I like the so I work with project managers. I'm with an engineering architecture construction firm, and the project managers that I work with like their check boxes and they want to know dates. That's about right. That seems about right. I mean, it's job entails a lot more than that. I get it. but boy, do they like their check boxes. That's for sure.
Well, for the layman out there, who are not familiar with project management, I mean, that's the only way I can sum it up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, that's a good summary. So what do you do outside of work? What are some of your hobbies?
Well, I do I like reading a lot, so I like to spend a lot of time, and it's interesting because I mean I spent a few years reading reading fiction books, and then I don't know, it just didn't do it for me, and I realized that I want to learn, and to be quite honest, and I think part of this has to do with how I was brought up. Because I'm more about life learning, and so it's always you have to be adaptable. And once we get into my story and you understand my background, adaptation was crucial to surviving. I'll be honest with you, because of my upbringing, my family of origin, I walked away from a full blown paid university education
Wow.
to get away from the family. So it's God knows what I would have done with if I had a university degree, but
yeah.
So my university is life, and I read a lot of nonfiction. I read a lot about well, in the last 7 years, I've been consumed by the business of mental health,
Mm-hmm.
and the modalities that are being used. And I want to be very clear here. Mental health is a business. It's not a condition. It's a business model. Mental well-being is a state within the human condition, and then mental illness are the injuries to the physical body. There's no other way of putting it, and so I always find it really interesting and curious on how the mental health business likes to use mental health in almost everything they talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Because it sells, it's sexy, it's mental, and mental health is health. It's really easy to say that, because you really can't say mental illness is illness or mental illness is health, because you wouldn't get very many people stepping up to the bar for a drink if that's what you're selling.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that a lot of people use the terms mental health and mental illness interchangeably, and they're really not. I mean, mental health is a state, like you can't say, I have mental health. Like, well, everyone has mental health. It's in your brain and it's either healthy or it's not. And if you have some illness, like, that is an illness. But a lot of people use that mental health as a term, and without quite understanding the ramifications of using it as a term. That's always really interesting to me to see how it's used.
Yeah, and I think if people could come to terms, and really, like, I mean, starting I'm not going to apologize for the pun, but I mean, if they would come to terms with actually what term they want to use, like I said, mental health is a marketing term. It's a business. We should really be referring to our states of being as well-being, mental well-being, versus mental illness. Mental illness is the condition. Mental well-being is the state that you're in, and then mental health is the business model that's being used.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. I mean, kind of using that mental health as that umbrella term with the different differences in what each of those mean underneath. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I have great conversations with people about that. So, don't get me started on the word safety, because we can be here for hours.
Do you have a serial killer or true crime story that fascinates you?
I was looking forward to actually answering this, because I mean, I really don't have serial killers. I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I don't mind. Like, each their own. If you want to own a gun and fire it away, go all the power to you. But it doesn't take skill, and it doesn't take thought to pull a trigger and fire a bullet. So when it comes to I guess harming another human life, but to answer your question, I was always fascinated with the likes of like a Timothy McVeigh. Is that the Oklahoma bomber?
Yep.
I'm always, and like the Unabomber, I'm always curious about the guys that delve into explosives. It's like how they're not missing fingers or digits, or haven't killed themselves. I mean, that's a true. There's some artistry there to and I don't want to minimize what people do as serial killers. But and I don't know. I don't have sensitivity to a lot of things, so this might irk people. But I mean, for people to walk into any store and just start picking people off with a bullet, well, there's no skill in that. So I mean, at one point, I just kind of look at it and go, no, where are the people who less effort, the most with the results, and that's that I always think of Timothy McVeigh on who would have thought a truckload of horse shit would blow up half a building or blow the face of a building.
Yeah.
Sorry for my crassness.
No, you're you're fine. It's fine here. I promise. Yeah, the things that people decide to do and what drove them to do those is always what fascinates me. Just what went into the decision to do something like my delicate ears. Exactly. Yes. How dare? No. It's one of those things that, how did they get to that point, and how did they decide their modality of what they're going to do? That's always an interesting part of what drove them to that point.
See, now here's a really interesting question for you to ask your guest. Depending on what sex they are or where they fit into with gender, I always think, it's like, ask the question, who is your favorite female, psychotic or serial killer, or along those lines? Because I mean, you got to dig pretty deep into finding, because
you do.
Violent, like women can be violent. I'm just putting that out there. It's
man. If I had to answer that one, there was one, and I don't remember her name. But it was way back. And she poisoned her whole family. She poisoned several kids. She killed multiple husbands. She put an ad in the paper and said, "I'm tired of living alone, but don't bother coming if you don't bother responding to this ad if you're not well-to-do yourself, because I'm well-to-do and interested in combining fortunes." And then proceeded to kill multiple people who responded to the ad to obtain their wealth. And then I think eventually her house burned down or something. Oh, you know what? She and her husband had a candy shop, and that burned down, and they got the insurance money from that. And I think that's where it kind of started. And whenever her house finally burned down, her dentures were in there, but her body was not. And so it was like there was a body in the bed, and her dentures, but it was not identified as her body. And so she theoretically could have escaped and gone on somewhere else. And I wish I could remember her name, but that's the one that always kind of caught my attention, because boy, it was a lot of people. It was a lot of people over a long period of time. And
and you see, for me, always go back to the Bonnie and Clyde days. I mean, I always thought that Bonnie was probably the mastermind.
Yeah. Yep.
But what do I know? I'm a Canadian in Ontario that likes to freeze every winter.
Listen,
now,
Canada.
You can't blame the polar vortex on Canadians. I'm just saying.
Canada sent that weather down here, I'm pretty sure. Y'all were tired of being nice. Canada's got some interesting serial killers too. There's the one guy on the bus who basically just snapped, and it was I think he was saying that God told him to do what he did, and I think he wound up like eating the person sitting next to him on the bus, and nobody noticed for a little while. Oh, yeah. It was awful. It was awful, but it was one of those. He had he was in a mental crisis. It was not, people like to say mental illness. I like to say mental crisis because I live with mental illness every day. But if I'm in a mental crisis, that's a different story for me that day. So, yeah, he was having not a great state of mind and essentially just snapped. But that one was in Canada. There was another one. I can't remember details though.
We had a fascinating serial killer who owned a landscaping business, and it turned out that he, I don't know, took the remains of people to the wood chipper, and then he used people's bodies and fill into other people, his customers' garden.
A little fertilizer.
Like all over. Ooh. Yeah, they had to go all over the place to go and like once they found out that he was I think he was targeting homosexual males.
And, wow!
And once they found out who this person was, and they had some hard evidence, they actually started going to some of his customers' homes and saying, "We have to dig up your garden."
Oh my gosh! Can you imagine?
Like police tape.
Oh my gosh!
So I mean, serial killers are. I love that question because I mean there's such an interesting. You go to so many places with that.
Yeah.
However, I mean, I'm a McVeigh.
Yep.
I'm intrigued by the McVeighs of the world.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good one. That's a good story. I mean, it's not a good story. Obviously, none of these are ever good stories, but it's an interesting one to kind of study. If you're into studying those kinds of things, that Oklahoma City bombing. When did that happen? It was in the 90s.
Yeah, I want to say it was like early 90s, maybe. I think it happened after the 80s. I think it was in the 90s. You're right. Mm-hmm. I think that was early 90s.
Yep. So you Great currently, question. Yeah, it's a good one. April 19th, 1995. See, Bite's on it. She knows.
She Google it. Come on now.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No. Listen, Bite is the Google. She's the Google queen. She will Google anything that we're talking about and pull up facts and details. And I rely on her to have the facts and details because I don't always have those facts and details. And I appreciate it. I could say something's in the mid 90s or early 90s or 90s. And she's like, let me fact check you real quick. I need a fact checker for sure. So you live currently with CPTSD, DID, and BPD. Can you give us a rundown of what each of those are and what symptoms you experience as a result of those illnesses?
Yeah. So the complex PTSD, I mean, that's just a different animal altogether. But I mean, it makes what really makes the complex PTSD diagnosis really interesting is that there's DID on top of it. Mm-hmm. Which is dissociative identity disorder, which is another fancy term for alternate personality. And so there's I counted today. I was writing an email to somebody. I've counted that I have over 17 different. Well, if I include myself, this version of conscious self, there's 17 other personalities in this body.
Yeah.
And to kind of put that in the context too, and so there's a broader understanding is that my alternate personalities know of you, know of this conversation. I'm not alone sitting here, even though I'm sitting here alone, but I'm not alone. And so all these entities are connected through this version of conscious self. However, I'm not connected to their version of self or conscious. So there's a distinct break there, and so and then so the complex PTSD. I mean, I have a lot of living flashbacks. Actually, I'll get into it right now with you. So
Sure.
One of the things that I deal with, and this is one of the things that I speak to my medical doctor, who is a specialist in psychotherapy, Dr. Bill. Hey, Dr. Bill, I'm on air again. Anyways, so I posed a question to him whether I'm having a living flashback in the PTSD, CPTSD world, or is what I'm experiencing the alternate identities trying to reintegrate themselves into this version of conscious self. And I'll explain to you what I go through. And I don't know if you had a chance to read any of the essays I sent you.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. So put it this way. I'm going to start off with a really simple concept. When you look at the brain, to me, the only way I can explain this, and I'll explain it this way. Every night for the past, over a year now, on average, it's about 2 hours a night. I experience the complete atomization of self. And if you look up atomization, it is basically annihilation. They've got different terms. Breaking things down to the finest particle. It's like going through a grinder. So what happens is I go through these. I have these episodes where I can't rely on any of my senses. They're all taken away. They become irrelevant. I experience a lot of trauma. Most of the time, it deals with my first traumatic episode incident when I was 4 years old, and then the 5 suicide attempts, and that's primarily where it's contained.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel every aspect of, for example, and I don't know if I can say this, but I was 10 years old when I committed suicide the very first time. I actually did it 3 times in one summer. Second time I died drowned in a pool, and it just happened to be a passerby saw me floating and pulled me out. But I had no pulse. There was no vital signs. To me, you might as well just call me dead.
Mm-hmm.
He revived me. Now every night I get to re-experience visualizations, the auditory expressions, everything from that event, right down to the physical sensations. So I mean, I'll be laying on my bedroom floor. I'll be twitching or tremoring or convulsing. It all depends on how severe it is, and it's basically I'm being ripped apart mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. You look at it, I'm being ripped apart, dismantled, and so what happens? And here's an example. I always use the term, with my family. It's like, well, lunacy is reality, and my reality becomes lunacy. And so what happens is I'll look at the mental component of this. So I look at the brain as, you've got a Rubik's Cube, which is essentially a 3-dimensional array, of storage or whatever you want to call it. And within that cube exists your subconscious, your unconscious, your consciousness, my case, all the personalities, and of course your animal instincts and animal low level functionality like breathing. And then you take that cube and then you wrap it with elastic, rubber band, and essentially they're all different sizes, all different shapes, but you just keep wrapping it until it becomes a big ball. Now, understanding that every intersecting point of the elastics is eventually a connection back to the cube. So what happens at night with me is, and I can feel, and it's spooky. I mean, it took me a good 6 months to become comfortable with this sensation. Um, but it's like someone is literally massaging my brain and pushing and pulling and just
Wow.
kind of manipulating the brain itself. And there are a lot of things like strange sounds I hear inside my head when it's happening. Um, and my therapist says, well, that's, it sounds like your brain is, pretty much being rewired. Um, and so I go through that every night. And I'll tell you, it's it's one of the most painful things I've ever experienced. The one that tops it all off is I get to experience the precise uh, moment, and it's in a 3-dimensional space. And it's like slivers of time. I get to re-experience the precise moment where my body and my soul separated, and I get to re-experience the precise moment when the soul and the body are reunited. I will tell you from my experience that we're not designed to re-accept the soul
Mm-hmm.
once it leaves, and it's the most painful thing in my life that I go through, and it's like it's I don't know. It's either God has a God, if the religious people, I'm not religious, but I mean, the only way I can say is it's either God or the devil has a great sense of humor, and I just happen to be the joke.
Yeah.
Um, but I go through that process, and it's like every day. And when I come out the other side, really, what happens is the things that people don't realize is that because my mind gets so messed up, all the data is there. It's just the pathways have been moved and,
Mm-hmm.
and manipulated and changed. And I get to relearn how to use my arms and legs again. I get
Wow.
to relearn how it's not a long process. It's about, I would say 30 minutes to 45 minutes. It's kind of like, and then, once I get my arms back and my legs, I have to reteach myself how to walk, reteach myself how to balance. And I gotta say, like, for my family, it's quite jarring for them to see me in that state, because they can never, because it's like um I know a lot of therapists like to use the video of the impala in Africa being eaten by a leopard, and the leopard gets chased away, and the prey or the predator gets chased away, and then all of a sudden this impala or gazelle comes um, back to life, and then it's all shaky, and it's going through like this nervous
Mm-hmm.
system, and then it stands up and it's all shaky. I go through the same process every night.
Wow.
So I mean, fun times in Victor's life, but I'm approaching with a great sense of humor, because I'll say this: like the first 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, I was completely terrified. I had no idea what this was,
Mm-hmm.
no idea at all. I thought I was losing my mind, and then I would say probably for the next 4 weeks, it became terrorization of Victor, and then now it's just it's like my new norm. I just go, okay. Yeah, and the misconception here is, the mental health system, or the therapy, like there's a lot of therapists out there that tell me that I'm the one who's in control. I'm the one who has choices. And I'll tell you right off the bat, when you're in that situation, there are no choices. There is
Mm-hmm.
no control. It's gotten me to a point where I I look at control and choice as the same thing. One relies on another. It's a symbiotic relationship. And I look at choice, for example, is, to me, that's all the therapy world talking about black and white. That's
Mm-hmm.
what that is to me. When I hear people say, "Oh, you have a choice," it's like, well, now there's your black and white thinking. Because
Right.
I get labeled that a lot, where everyone says, "Oh, you're a black and white thinker." No. And then the other side of the thing is this whole control piece, and I'll tell you that what I'm learning is control is a Homo sapien construct. We think we're in control. We think we can control nature. We think we can control our environment, but we can't. And I mean, this COVID thing is a prime example of where we can't. We have no control, and it's actually I find it intriguing and interesting with COVID, because COVID is the Mother Nature coming back to us and saying, "Here's your damn reality check, you arrogant, ignorant assholes. You know, you're trying to destroy me. Well, I'm going to throw this at you."
Mm-hmm.
It's my it's my position. Is it correct? I don't know, but it's
Sure.
the position that I have from what I get to learn every night.
Yeah. So you said that when this started happening, and I read your essay, so I kind of have a general idea, but for the benefit of others, can you describe when this started to happen, the dissociative identity disorder in particular?
Well, the dissociative identity disorder, that started, it was first documented in 2015, when I was institutionalized. I can't remember if it was voluntarily or involuntarily. But yeah, I was institutionalized for 2 weeks in a mental facility, rehab facility. And I apparently had a 2 hour, 3 hour interview, dialogue, conference with a psychiatrist and a doctor. I came across as completely lucid, like I knew exactly what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Held myself accordingly, had a proper conversation. The very next day, the psychiatrist saw me in the hallway and said hello to me, and started asking me questions that people shouldn't know.
Right.
And I just about jumped out of my skin, and I looked her in the eye and said, "Who the fuck are you?"
Right. How
And
do you
she
know
said,
this?
"Whoa, wait, Victor, what's going on?" And it's just like, we had a 2 hour we had a conversation yesterday. I'm like, "No, we didn't." And so then, that brought on a whole litany of more tests and whatnot. And they finally documented that I have DID. So there is a version, and I might be jumping ahead of myself in these questions, but there is a version of Victor that looks and appears exactly like this, comes across exactly like this, but nothing's registering.
Mm-hmm.
And and that came out too, and well, that came out in my court case, where all, like, my current circle of care, they all knew. Even my ex-therapist who took me to court, she knew, but didn't say anything. And so the courts did nothing. And apparently I pleaded guilty I don't have any recollection of being there.
Wow.
Which, if you want to get into that story, we can get in that story, but or you want to stick to your script. Oh, and by the way, for the borderline personality,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of things that in that realm that I hit. I used to have, excuse me, smoker's cough. It's not COVID. Smoker's cough. I smoke.
Also, you can't catch it through the screen, so it's okay.
Yeah. So one of the things that I found, with the borderline personality is yeah, sure, I had a lot of abandonment issues early on, but through different therapies and modalities, that's been laid to rest once and for all. But I do have a lot of a lot of people say I like to break social norms and the construct of society. And I have a lot of distrust, and well, I mean, when it comes to my distrust, what my family of origin did to me, I was already distrustful, and it took me probably, from 18 to 40. It took me a long time to trust the world again. And then my ex-therapist went and did what she did, and now I trust no one.
Mm-hmm.
It brings up a lot of issues with my current circle of care, because every so often they have to deal with the fact that I don't trust them. And I'll say this is where I'll have confidence in somebody. I respect people, If you're on the receiving end of the brutality of my honesty, that's a good sign that you have my respect. You know, if you're not on the receiving end of that, you're not getting my respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the whole industry, my experiences, and I don't want to jump ahead here, but my experiences, the only thing I have to say about the mental health and addictions community as a whole is they shaped who and what I am. They created me. What we have up in Canada here is called the Ministry of Attorney General, which is the court services and police services, I believe, is in that bucket. I could be wrong, but all the legal stuff in our province is under this Ministry of Attorney General. And I can tell you that they completely minimized my experiences, essentially ignored all the medical. I had a medical assessment report provided to the courts. I had almost a 30-page psychiatric assessment by a forensic psychiatrist to the court. And in Canada, we have a thing called mental health diversion. You get, and it's basically, it's like, okay, the courts understand that you're mentally ill, but we're going to go down this stream and try to help you. And the only person who can make that determination is the Crown Attorney, I guess, we call it the Crown Attorney. I'm not too sure who you call it when they work for the state. Is that the state attorney or something like that? I just want to make sure I got the right.
Yeah, I mean, it would be we have the Attorney General, and then if you're in court, okay. I guess it would be probably a state's attorney or something.
Okay, yeah. So basically, that person is the only person that has the qualification, the power to make that determination. In my case, my ex-therapist was a registered psychotherapist. She had nothing else as credentials, and female. And then, of course, the Crown Attorney was a female. And so when I look at what happened to me in my court cases, because I mean, I've gone through so many tribunals and so many complaints processes about my ex-therapist. And throughout the whole process, her lawyer kept going to the courts and printing off transcripts. So I mean, that's how I found out about learning about what happened in court. Is I read the transcripts just like everyone else, even though I was, apparently I was quote unquote there. Yeah. But no one actually checked in to see if is Victor this version of conscious self? Is he really here in the building? Does he really understand what's going on?
Right.
Yeah, there was no one like that. And also, I was supposed to have one. I was supposed to have someone like that, and which is take it a step further. That's an infringement on my Charter of Rights and Freedom, kind of like your Constitution. It's the same thing. But yeah, that was completely ignored, and it is what it is, I suppose. And so that lit the fire in my belly to help others.
Yeah.
Sorry, I kind of went all over the place.
That's okay. So there's a couple things I do want to kind of circle back and touch on. So the CPTSD, that's driven by, and so the difference between PTSD and CPTSD is that PTSD is more of a singular event, and CPTSD is not only recurring in the past events, multiple exposures to traumatic events, but then also usually with something on top of that. So some sort of resulting mental illness that you have as well. So, and then borderline personality disorder, BPD, is also trauma driven, correct? Is that a correct understanding of that? That's also kind of trauma in the childhood drives that borderline personality disorder. I posted a couple of links in chat for understanding borderline personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder, and complex PTSD. But so you also mentioned already some of what you describe as characters, and that you share your life with these. Would you tell us a little bit about those characters?
Sure. Well, you know what? And this might be hard to take for some of your viewers and listeners, but I have to start. I have to start there because it's basically ground zero, where everything started for, especially with the DID
Hmm.
component. So when I was 4 years old, I was standing in my driveway watching a little ground, what they call it, an abachi fire barbecue. Um, so I mean, it wasn't too far off the ground, and so it was lit and it was burning, and my brothers were behind me, riding their bicycles and skidding behind me and getting closer and closer to me, and I wasn't really paying attention to what they were doing. And so I was just watching this fire, and then I don't know, I just got absorbed in watching the flames and how they danced and caressed with one another. It was just an amazing, beautiful thing. Um, well, then I got hit from behind. I ended up falling into the fire. Suffered severe burns to my hands, my chest. My chest got pretty much branded on the side of the barbecue, and burnt my throat. There were a lot of things that happened. When my one eye got burned, my face, the hair, you name it. And then I don't remember what happened once I pulled myself out of the fire. And then I woke up, and then these are my first childhood memories, by the way. On top of this,
Yeah.
and then when I woke up, I was in the hospital alone. Had two masked people in front of me, a male and a female. Could hear voices, couldn't understand what was going on. I couldn't talk, I couldn't do anything because I burnt some of my vocal cords or my throat, from all the hot air. Anyways, I just started freaking out, and next thing I know, I'm getting stabbed with a needle, and lights out for Victor at that point. So I have no idea how long I was there. And then I remember coming to as my mom was pulling up into the driveway, and so we got out of the car. They had to help me because I was so sedated. And then once we got into the house, my mom sent my brothers to their bedroom, and essentially that was open season on Victor with any weapons she could find. I don't want to get into details. There's tons. There's other podcasts out there, interviews, um, where if you want if you want to know details. I don't know if I can give you the name of the podcast I was on. I don't know how this
Absolutely.
works.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Ron Forsythe is his name, and it's Life in Red podcasts. And so my very first podcast came out in January 15th of this year. First interview, so it tells you everything.
Hmm.
I didn't spare anyone, any discretion on what I was talking about with that interview. Anyway, so needless to say, I was locked up in a bedroom. In excruciating pain because both my mom and my dad took their shots at me when this happened, and then they locked me up in a bedroom. One of the things that they told me at the time was, "Hey, you know what? You're the mistake, but we still love you," and that's crucial to of a lot of things of how it shaped me. So when I was locked up in the bedroom, it was just me, myself, and I was in so much pain, and so the way my body protects itself is with all the trauma, with all these different traumatic uh, incidences. Well, my brain fragmented or segmented and developed its own personality.
Hmm.
And so there's two personalities. One's called Harris and one's called the Beast. They have been with me since I've been 4. So we're looking at like over 45 years now. And so yeah, so now, like, when I do have a dissociative episode, sometimes it's the Beast that comes out, and like it sounds, he's an animal. There's no brain power. It's just brute force.
Hmm.
My body is his punching, and there isn't a damn thing on my body that he won't hit. And I'll tell you, 2 years ago, I've suffered broken ribs, I've suffered bruised ribs, I've suffered fracture here, more bruising over here, lacerations, you name it. the Beast or Harris, they like to the best way to put it is they like to pound me in the ground whenever they get. So, Harris and I have a really interesting relationship, love, hate. He used to be my protector, but now he's my torturer. I spent years trying to figure out, because I buried all that. My tactical error, and I want to emphasize this with all your listeners and viewers. Do not bury your trauma. Do not do that. I buried it for 30 some odd years. And let me tell you, I was able to hold that lid down, except the box that everything was in blew apart, and all hell broke loose for me for almost 5 years. I've dealt with substance abuses from pharmaceuticals to a lot of alcoholism. Hell, man, I'm at one point, and this is where I have a lot of distrust now of the mental health system, because at one point they polluted me full of so many drugs. At one point I was taking over 30 pills a day, just to survive. And a lot of it had to do with more or less side effects to side effects to side effects. It was, you got side effects? Yeah, we got a pill for that. And then I'll be on that pill for a while, and all of a sudden more side effects would come up. Oh, those? Yeah, we got a pill for that. Yeah, so I used to have I used to have a little tray pill. At the time I was under 50, and I had like a little tray pill with the days of the week and AM and PM, and both compartments. Every Sunday night it was a routine. I would take the pills out and I'd fill up all the containers, close the lid, and it just got to the point where I had to stop, and I became so polluted. People looked at me and they were saying, well, some people had a great sense of humor, and they said, well, he's one shade away from glowing in the dark, my skin tone, or he's one shade away from looking like death. And it was bad all around.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, when it came to the entities, Harris and the Beast have been there the longest. The ones that I find really intriguing, and I'll just give you a quick run, because I wrote an email today, and I wrote down all these.
Sure.
Like I said, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 6 versions of 6 distinct identities of what we call Little Victor. There's 6 versions of that individual or that entity, and they're each their own. They don't really cross pollinate. And then there's 3 different versions of teenage Victor. And there's one pretty much for each suicide attempt. There's one for for a police beating I took when I was either 11, somewhere between 11 and 13. I was assaulted by police. But the other ones I want to talk to, the ones I really find fascinating, and like I said, there's another version of me, but nothing checks in up here, and he's the most difficult one to actually check or actually identify, because I come across as a fully functional human being.
Right.
And it's obvious that something's missing. And then I have a really interesting identity called the Warrior Chief, and he's a Aboriginal, Native, whatever you want to call. I don't know if he's a spiritual healer. I don't know if he's what he identifies himself as, actually a warrior chief, but he does send emails or communicates via email through my email account to my circle of care. But the majority of these next ones I'm going to list here, they all know technology, and so far I have to qualify this by saying Harris has his own email address.
Wow.
I don't know the password to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the password. I don't know anything about Harris's own email, so I don't know if he's sending stuff or when he sends stuff. All I know is that I've received death threats from Harris,
Wow.
multiple times. And I go to my circle of care and go, what do I do with this? It's one of those things. But there's also another interesting identity called the poet, and to me, this one, he's the most fascinating, or she, I'm not too sure, what that entity is the most fascinating, because what happens is he is like the conduit for all my personalities to share stories with, and he writes about it and then broadcasts it to my circle of care and everyone else who happens to be on that he knows their email address.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you get a thing from me and it's signed off the poet, it's not me saying anything. I just wanted to be clear on that. Because they usually all sign off their names on the bottom of each email before my name. But yeah, so there's about I want to say there's about 375, somewhere around there, different communications from the poet. I've got this great idea now that I think I'm gonna, because I haven't seen one yet and I don't know how to do it, and so maybe I can lean on your following to help me out here, because I've never written a book before, but I have this idea that actually I want to take all the writings, because my circle of care, what they end up doing is when these emails are sent on behalf of these entities, they send them back for me for acknowledgement, analyzing, digesting what they say, and reflecting on the poetry, the poetry themselves. And there are a lot of times where I have no idea. I'm reading this information for the first time when they send it back to me. And this is what kind of got me. Part of what got me in trouble with my former therapist is the fact that my DID personalities would send, but it wasn't just exclusively to her. It was to my whole circle of care. But she was primarily part of the content of the emails, and so so my ex-therapist, I guess, took offense to that, and besides the two dissociated voicemails, anyways, and one of the voicemails, I'll be honest with you, was kind of nasty, but it wasn't me who said it,
right?
But it was all used, and all these words and everything were weaponized against me, and she used it all and hung me in court for it. But anyways, these identities are really interesting. I mean, I have one that I call X, because from what I've gathered with my crisis support line and other people that I've used and the people who've communicated with this entity, is the fact that A, he has no idea who he is, B, has no idea where he is, C, he doesn't even know if he exists, and so we just call him X because we don't know what or who he is. And then of course the last one I want to touch upon, and the poet is the one who is the communication channel for this group. There's a group inside of me called management. What the hell that is, how many people or members are part of management, I have no idea. So I mean, I look at it and go, is there another 20 identities that I don't know about, and they call themselves management? Only time will find out. So yeah, it's kind of really interesting. It's kind of a mixed bag. I know that when I do dissociate, I can tell the difference when the beast comes out, based on where I'm attacked. The beast really, the beast really likes to go for the ribs. I got a bad ankle. He likes to go after my groin, and punches me in the mouth every so often. I've got broken teeth, spit out a lot of fillings and all kinds of stuff just from that one entity alone. where Harris, for example, if he comes out, he's going to literally try to break any bone or make me bleed. It's one or the other. It's just the life I live. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it does, and it's interesting to hear you say, you have this piece called management, and you're just not sure how many. Is DID something that improves over time, or is it something that grows over time or shrinks over time, or what's the traditional kind of prognosis for that? Is it lifelong?
That's a great question, because with my circle of care, we're all under the understanding that from the perspective of my mental illness and the severity of everything, they've kind of told me that I'm no man's. I'm out there, in no man's land, and that we're writing the book or the chapters as we go along. There's no book. What I'm going through is not covered in any university textbook. So it's all new. This is new for a lot of people. So I mean, kind of in a certain way, I'm comforted to know that my support staff, we're all on the same page. I mean, they're at the other end of the page. I'm probably at the bottom end, but we're all on the same page when it comes to managing this animal. I know this though, like I don't have there is no fix. There's period. There's no any and I don't want to sound I don't want to sound too crass and whatnot, or sound, I mean, a lot of people say I'm a negative person because of my mental illness experiences throughout the processes I've been through. But I just want to say, if you're seeing a mental health professional of any sort, and they say that they can fix you, my suggestion would be tell them to go fuck themselves and just turn around and walk out the door and find yourself another therapist, because with mental illnesses, there is no fix. There's no fix for PTSD. There's no fix for CPTSD. There's no fix for borderline personality disorder. There's no fix for DID.
Right.
What there is, though, is there are opportunities for you to understand self, so self could be understood. And what that leads to is your growth as an individual, as a human being, in understanding what you have, or what you're given, or the curse, whatever you want to call it. And it's really about managing. I mean, what I've been through in the last 5 years, I'll tell you, the rage and anger finally burnt themselves out. I want to say maybe like a month ago. I don't have. You're seeing the toned down version of me, because I used to get quite animated and quite furious with talking about my mental illness, talking about what happened, how I was hung in court, the health system, Ontario, going through all these complaint processes. They've all turned their back and made me feel like the bad guy.
I mean, that shit would make me mad too. So don't feel like you're alone in that. I mean, if that's something that I think would make anyone pretty angry.
Yeah, and my ex-therapist, it's been 5 years. Well, it's been 6 years, I think. 2016. Okay, five and a bit years since we last saw each other in therapeutic session, and she came out in 2017, said that she was going to give me my health records when I requested them. Her lawyer said the same thing, and then they came back to me, because it happened in December, and they came back to me and they said, well, your file's so large that we can't meet this date, and because there's government documentation saying that there's a 30-day calendar day window.
Mm-hmm.
I went back to them and said, adhere to the 30 days. And once I did that, at the 11th hour, I got an email from her lawyer saying that, they're not going to release my records. And I've been in this fight ever since. They've used legislation against me. We have this thing in Canada. It's I don't know what the acronym stands for. I just know how to quote this. It's called PIFA. It's something about personal health information privacy, and it's called PIFA. And one of the things with PIFA is that there's a Section 52 EI, which says that you are a risk to others and yourself, if exposed to certain information. And so with that, that's all I keep hearing from their camp.
Wow.
And yet, they just applied it to me in August of last year. And we have a organization called the Information Privacy Commission, which is what we short form for IPC, and they're supposed to protect the public. And I've gone to them 7-8 times now with the same complaint, the same issue. And, because when they decide something, there is no condition or sentence to that decision. So if they send me a letter today saying that this is our decision, well, at 12:01 later on tonight, I can turn around and I can ask the same bloody question and say, I would like to have my records. And so that's the game that we're playing. And, as a taxpayer, it's frustrating because I think to myself, how many hours have you guys put into the same thing over and over and over? I'm not going away because,
right.
I have rights as a mentally ill person. I have rights to see my own record. And it's happened so long ago, that, 5-6 years ago, that, I was fair game. Yeah, throw that law at me. But now, 5 years later, it's not applicable because and they have no merit or relevant commentary on my mental well-being.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a couple questions from chat that I want to make sure that we get to. So Laugh for Purpose said, I really hope this question doesn't come off as insensitive, but you talk about your other identities. Do your other identities see you as just another identity in the group and as if they are the main one?
Oh, that's a really good question. The only one, this is the thing. You see, I don't have a connection to the others. So the only one I can say that thinks that he or it's the main one, because I've seen it in writing, is Harris likes to refer to me as the host. But other than that, I don't know what the other ones think of me or know. I mean, they must know of me, but I don't think there's a connection to a certain extent. And I can tell you that, like, I'm doing a lot of inner child work these days with my other therapist, Jim. Hey, Jim. Anyways, so we do a lot of inner child work, and so I want to believe that the child versions of me know of me and know that I'm here to protect them.
Yeah.
That's the best answer. That's a really good question. I appreciate that question. That's not insensitive at all.
And then Bite also says, I can agree with that wholeheartedly. I believe she's talking about whenever you were saying if a therapist says that they can fix you to run. And I just want to say that we talked about this last week as well, with just you don't graduate and they hand you a piece of paper that says, here are the cures. And your therapist isn't sitting there looking at a sheet of paper and saying, I'm going to say this to you. Is that going to work? That didn't work. Let's go to the next one. Like there's not that. And anytime you go to therapy, anytime you go for a treatment for a mental illness, you're the one who has to do the work. That therapist can't do the work for you. They might be able to help you get to that place, but they definitely can't they can't cure you of something like that. So yeah, absolutely. And then Bitemark also asks, what is your favorite poem? See, I told you she would be here to ask that one. So what is your favorite
And
poem?
you know what? Well, I'll be honest with you. My favorite poem, and I don't have just one. I want to say my favorite poems are the ones that the poet sends to, for example, Dr. Bill, without me knowing, and then Dr. Bill sending them back to me, so I get to read them for the first time. Those are my like. I mean, I strongly believe that my personal identities that are inside me, they each have the right to freedom. They each have the right to thought. They each have the right for expression, and I just happen to be the vehicle to get that. And so yeah, so when I get feedback from Dr. Bill or Jim or whomever sends me these poems, I get excited because I mean this is I'm like a kid in a candy store. I'm looking at these writings for the first time, even though, and it's really weird because even though it comes from me, I have no input into any of these poems, and I can tell you that some of the poems use language that even I had to go to Google and look up the words. So yeah, I mean that's hopefully I answered her question.
Yeah, that's great.
With a valid answer.
Yeah, she said it must be fascinating to read poetry written by someone that's using the same brain. Yes, for sure.
Well, and this is where I was. This is where I was. I don't know if I finished. I can't remember if I finished this off, but I want to write a book. Dr. Bill and I, we've had these conversations many times. Where I mean, he's got over 300 pieces of poetry or dissociative communications from me, and he mentioned to me a few times, you know, I should really write a book. And so I went online and I went and looked on Amazon and looked at a bunch of books about DID and different ailments. And I've never seen anything that's written by, I don't know how else to put it, but alternative identity or alternate personalities. I haven't seen anything published like that. You know, I've got a mountain full of emails.
Yeah, it would definitely be unique, and I think that it would make for a really interesting read too, especially if you did like a kind of a forward to it and put it into chapters and put a little bit of your own thoughts to paper as well about what your other identity wrote.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because a lot of times I look at it and I don't know whether I should approach it as per identity with a timeline for that identity, or if I do a timeline and then say during this, you know, say 2014, here are all the identities that came out and had something to say. So I don't know which way to go yet. I don't know which one's going to be more, which would flow easier or be easier for the reader. So I'm exploring all that, and I'm kind of, you know, excited, you know, when I get some free time.
Yeah, that elusive free time, right? Bite said I love poetry and reading, so definitely keep us informed about potential book progress. Absolutely, yes. And I do just want to.
Welcome to find me on. Sorry, I was just gonna say they're always welcome to find me on Twitter and you know, always ask me how the book's coming or if there's any progress because
like absolutely.
I have a blank canvas. I just don't know how to present the material, and that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
I got lots of material. I just don't know how to present it yet.
Yes. Yep. I posted your Twitter earlier, so let me pop that again here for you.
Okay. And people, you know, and maybe I'll ask your viewers and your readers. And I don't know, maybe I should do a poll on Twitter. What would be more beneficial if I broke the poems as the character, or you know, whatever I'll call them characters because I mean that's just easier for me to most people understand. is it character first and then the timeline, or do I do timeline with characters appearing throughout the timeline, interweaved or interwoven?
I think to me it would
So
depend
yeah,
on how the content was flowing, but you could start putting it together one way and decide that wasn't right. But it just depends.
yeah, I'm open. So feel free to reach out and tell me your opinion, because
Yeah.
I also want to make it so that it's not so abstract that
Mm-hmm.
the layman can't understand what the book's about.
Yep. So can you share with us some of your favorite and least favorite aspects of dialectical behavior therapy, prolonged exposure therapy, and equine assisted therapy?
Sure. I have really nothing bad to say about DBT.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I don't have anything bad to say about it is because DBT was actually developed by someone with mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you developed your own modality and coping mechanism, then I'm interested. I'll buy in. If it's vaporware, something you thought of without having the lived experience, then I'm not really
Yeah,
interested.
right. Yeah, for sure.
Um, prolonged exposure therapy. Well, that's a really interesting. That's an interesting one, because I can tell you that. Oh fuck! I'll tell you this. It's not for everyone. Because I don't know if you understand how prolonged exposure therapy works. It's kind of like torture in itself. But what it is that you expose yourself under the guidance of a practitioner, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But you expose yourself to a traumatic experience um, over and over and over again, and the person who's facilitating it will get you to say, tell the story over and over again, and every time you retell it, he will ask you for more details in that scenario, and also, you know the way they frame it is they try to get your brain to think that you're actually there experiencing.
Yeah.
And so the whole premise to that is that if you do it long enough, you become desensitized by it, and I can tell you it's worked. It's worked with my abandonment issues. I used to have serious abandonment issues. And I spent 6 weeks doing prolonged exposure therapy just on the abandonment piece, and yeah, it went away just as fast as it came. And then there are some things that are kind of resistant to that effect. I'll tell you that with prolonged exposure therapy, and I do a lot of work on my own too. I spend maybe 30 minutes to an hour a day listening to my very first traumatic experience to try to get me to a point where I can have a discussion. I think I've reached that point, but I'm still impacted by that because of
Mm-hmm.
all the DID that came out of it. So I have no problem. So prolonged exposure therapy worked in desensitizing me about my very first traumatic episode or experience. It's just, how does prolonged exposure tackle the DID that came with it?
Right. Right.
So it's yeah. So prolonged exposure therapy, not for everyone. It's they should put a disclaimer on that saying, if you're quote unquote crazy enough to take this on, go do it. But I mean, you're exposing yourself, as the title says, you're exposing yourself to all that trauma, and you got to be ready for it on
Mm-hmm.
all your 4 pillars of life. And when I say 4 pillars, I mean mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. You need to be ready for it, because you're walking into the lion's den with that one.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll get hurt, but sometimes you got to feel the pain in order to heal. So that's what I got to say about prolonged exposure therapy. I've seen it work on me on some of the things that I thought could never be resolved, and it's resolved a couple things. Some things I don't know if it'll ever resolve in me, but it's worked to that aspect. And then equine therapy. Oh, this is such an interesting topic. The good things about equine therapy is Um, the equine therapist that I have, she's not. I can't really call her a therapist. She's actually an equine assisted learning coach, and so I spend a lot of time with the herd, and I'm sure most people who follow me on Twitter have seen the herd, and whatnot. I've taken some videos, and I can tell you that it's really about um, calibrating your nervous system. Horses are the ultimate lie detector, and if you see a horse human interaction, and if you see a horse what is perceived as misbehaving, chances are it's actually on the human side of the equation where the issue lies. The
Mm-hmm.
horse only reflecting back on what that is. So what it's taught me over a long time, it's really taught me how to check in with other people's nervous system. So for a prime example, um, with COVID and all this other stuff, I've been, and I use a crisis line, almost a daily basis to get by. And what I can tell you is, sometimes when I'm going through my nightly episodes, I have to call the crisis number, um, just to get me through. But part of it is the support that I need from them is for them to be speaking, so that um, I can then hone in on their style of speaking. Their rhythm, all these underlying issues within speech itself. If you close your eyes and really listen, um, you can really begin to sense and feel the person's nervous system. And so what the equine therapy has taught me throughout this process is, uh, it's given me the opportunity to understand, and recalibrate my own nervous system by speaking to someone else, or hearing someone else speak who has a even keeled or a semi balanced nervous system. And so it's very beneficial in that respect. I can tell you that when I first started working with the horses, my nervous system, this goes back about 2 years now. When I first started working with the horses, Theo, who's a big lovable goof of a Clydesdale, he didn't grow up on a horse farm, so he doesn't really think he's a horse. But and he, he's I think he grew up with goats or something like that, but he's a really interesting character. And so when I first started working with him, my nervous system was so out of whack that as I was standing beside him and trying to work with him, he used to bite my arm all the time, like literally, like not like a little nibble, like he
Right.
would come down and clamp on my arm. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, didn't break skin, but he left, like, I would have his teeth marks on my forearms, even through my clothes, and
Horse
so
bites bruise pretty good too. So
yeah, so it was, so from that perspective, it was really interesting, and then slowly, working with him and the rest of the herd, I've been able to really find and see the benefits of this version of equine therapy, where it's really about the existence of in the moment, and it's as simple as this. Uh, you just have to be, quote unquote, be with the horse, be just in your environment, just exist.
mm-hmm.
You don't bring anything else to the table. Like, you have to be able to reach that point. And when I really think about it, when I look at how my transformation, my growth, and it's an ongoing thing, with the horse therapy. um, I've really become, well, I really changed my viewpoint of the world, because when I look at the world now, to be quite honest, the world that we live in is complex, but it's not complicated. The and this is where the complication comes into play. Our own species intentionally, consciously, uh, designs, develops, and executes, um, systems or policies that complicate the world around us. But the world's not complicated. We're doing it to ourselves. And this is, this is one of the things that I've learned now is that when I look out in the world through my distorted lens that's been broken and and cracked and all kinds of stuff, I don't distinguish people by their gender orientation. I don't recognize people by labels like BIPOC or anything. I just see one race under one big sky. That's
Mm-hmm.
all I see. And there's a lot of people who criticize me for that, saying that, the world can't be too simple. Or they like to attack me saying that I'm colorblind to racial issues. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I'm not colorblind to it. We're all one human race. Period. Like just like COVID, just like mental illness, it doesn't care about your social economic stature. It doesn't care about your disposition in the world. It doesn't care about the color of your skin. It doesn't care what sex you are. It doesn't care about anything. Those two entities, COVID and mental illnesses, are designed for one thing and one thing only, and that is to destroy human life. Period. That's what I've learned.
Yeah. So you grew up in an abusive household, as you've described a little bit for us here, from your brothers to your parents. How did you go about forming your own family as an adult? And what I mean by that is, were there any difficulties that you faced forming your own family, and was there anything good that you took from your experience in your childhood to your own family in the way of traditions or rituals or rules or anything like that?
So I'll start with the second point first. No, I didn't take anything from my family
Understandable.
of origin.
Yep.
They didn't have anything worth taking. And the answer to the first point, I knew what the good, well, I knew what the ugly and bad looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you start looking at parenthood and families, and you start looking at that bar, I know how low that bar was set for my upbringing. So any raising in the bar above that is a win. And so I try to put the bar pretty high. And I would say what I found really challenging, like we were talking about earlier, my kids are daughters, so I don't know the first thing about how daughters operate, or how their social networks work, or anything like that. And what I found really challenging was my eldest daughter. She's mentally ill, and that illness came out at the same time. A lot of it had to do with like her schooling, and just the pre, what is it? I don't even know what to call it. Like grade 7, 8, all the way through high school.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of issues. And she's been diagnosed with mental illness, and and I'll be honest with you. So she was probably one of the reasons why I ended up in a mental institution. Excuse me. Back in 2015, because I remember it distinctly. I was unemployed at the time, and then I had my daughter, who just came back. I can't remember where she was, but she just came back from somewhere, and she was having a mental breakdown. And at the time, she was, there was a lot of violence with her, and just a lot of emotional dysregulation. So I tried to calm her down. I tried to, contain the rage, and so that there would be no more harm done. And she turned around and punched me right in the mouth, full on fist,
Oh, wow.
right in my mouth. And from that perspective, that brought on all my baggage to the table.
Mm-hmm.
I had to fight really hard, and to step away from that situation, because I know what I'm capable of, and I didn't want to go down that road. So I stepped away, and then had an emergency session with my with Dr. Bill, and that's pretty much how I ended up in a
Mhm.
facility for, but both myself and my eldest daughter, we've both been in mental facilities. We've both been when the public's not around. We've both been abused, verbally, degraded, minimized. You name it. You want to throw every label, whatever label you can come up with. I'm pretty sure I probably experienced it in the mental health and the healthcare system. When the public's around, when they have access, yeah, you know what? The healthcare professionals in hospitals, they're on good behavior. But as soon as
Sure.
that door closes, locks, it's open season on the mentally ill.
That's hard to hear.
It's just a fact. It's just a fact of
Yeah.
life.
Oh, well,
Like
I mean,
said,
it's hard to hear.
I'm
It's got to
not
be
here
even harder to experience, you know?
Yeah, well, and I'll be honest with you. I like I said, I'm not going to mince my words. Like
Mhm.
and there's a lot of naysayers in Ontario, in my community, who don't like what I have to say, who say, well, that's not true. And it's like, well, have you ever tried to be your undercover boss and actually put yourself through the mental health system? How about you try that and record it all and see exactly what happens? Not just in one city, go to multiple cities, go across country and see how all
Mhm.
these, there's no standardization. It's like when I look at the mental health system in Canada, for example, all the way across our nation, I scratch my head and go, shit, man, who's who in this zoo?
Yeah.
It's like, it's like there are times where I think to myself, I'm not the crazy one. It's actually you, the system, the people in it. You're the narcissist. The every label that you've thrown on me. Well, guess what? You're the ones who are the narcissists in the whole bunch. You're the ones who have
Mhm.
the egos. You're the ones who, you're the ones who are selfish. And it's interesting because one of the things that's really helped me, um, the best prescription that I ever received from Dr. Bill. And I'll tell you, Dr. Bill doesn't prescribe medications very often. And I'll say that this isn't a medication. And I don't know if I can show you a book that he prescribed to me. And really,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
it's it's a book that's influenced me heavily. Well, it's a story that's influenced me heavily. So here's what the book is. I don't know if you can see that. It's called Lame
Mhm.
Deer: Memoirs of a Sioux Medicine Man. Well, you still writing there? I'll keep it up.
Yep. I'm looking it up on Goodreads. Got it.
All right, good. So the Lame Deer story is he's actually a real individual, and it's a really interesting story. But it's inspired me, and this whole story, when I go through my nightly episodes and I get totally dismantled. I used to always tell people that, like, how do you get through it? And I would always say, I focus on tomorrow's sunrise. That's all. My only promise I can give you is tomorrow's sun. Um, but when I look at when I read this book and I've read everything that he went through, his career and all his whole exploits, and then I've come to the realization, and this is what's helped me get through a lot of my tough times,
Mhm.
is that what I'm going through serves a purpose. And what I'm going through is my own rite of passage. Everyone, I've come to believe now that everyone in life has their own rite of passage. We all have our own Sundance that we have to attend to, not by choice. It'll just happen. And, some people are luckier than others. I go through what I go through, and I scrape myself off the floor every night and get ready to keep my promise to the world, and that's for seeing you on the other side of tomorrow's sunrise.
Yep.
But that's the best piece of advice I can give you or not advice, but a suggestion on a read.
Hey, we're always here for good book recommendations for sure. Give me just a second. I'm just gonna holler at my kid real quick to go to bed. Hey, pumpkin, bedtime. They'll go to bed.
So
I
will
just
that be in
just
the
have to
live?
remind them. Huh?
Yep. So is that in the live version of this?
Yes, that's in the live version. Hopefully, probably it'll get cut out in editing. Sometimes, I don't remember to cut things out in editing all the time, but yeah. So if you could go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice, when would you go back to, first of all, and then also what would that advice be?
That's a really good question. Uh, that's a really good question. I mean, I look at it and I would look at it as I would give that 4-year-old self, uh, I would give him the uh, advice and really say that he didn't need Harris or the Beast to survive that ordeal.
Do you think that
Maybe
you would have
that would have
listened at
stopped
that
me.
age?
Probably not. The other time I would have stepped in is I would pick any one of the suicide attempts. Say don't do it. It's not
Yeah.
worth it.
Yep.
Because the one thing that this has taught me, and this is one thing that a lot of people can't take away from me, is when I'm going through my episodes at night. Primarily, it what I re-experience, especially with the atomization of self on those 4 pillars of your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. Um, I can tell you that when I go through that process, there all these experiences that I get to re-experience are mostly because of decisions that I made. Um, and so when I think about it, karma's a bitch, and there's no other way of putting it. Because those are decisions that I made. Uh, they weren't anything to do with mental illness at the time, anyways. Um, I mean, when I look back at it, and I think to myself about that 10-year-old, and I've done a lot of reflecting. When you go through what I go through at night, a lot of times, all you can do, this version of conscious self, is step back and just have a seat and be an observer, because I can't do anything to change the situation. It's just
Mm-hmm.
I go through the meat grinder. So you spend a lot of time reflecting, and like I said, I've been doing this. This experience has been going on for over a year and a bit. So you spend a lot of time reflecting on all kinds of different things of the world, philosophy, you name it. And so when I think about it, it's I would love to show those earlier versions of me what I get to experience now, and say, do you want to go down this road?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that you're going to impact uh, this version of yourself when he's 50, 40 years later.
Right.
You're going to have detrimental impact on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I said, everything I experienced because of decisions that I made. No one else made it. And when I look back at it, when I look at my family of origin, all the violence, and you have to understand that it was so violent, and my parents would use, my brother, you name it, they would use anything as a weapon. If it wasn't nailed down, it was a weapon. And I was on the receiving end of that weapon. So when I look at the whole the whole situation, it's one of those situations where it's like, well, do I kill all of them, or do I kill myself? It's either them or me. Someone has to go here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a firm believer that, no man, no woman, human has the right to take another man's life. But I see nothing wrong with people personally making that decision, because I mean they have that right.
Mm-hmm.
So take it, leave it. Edit that out if you want. I mean, I don't condone. I want to be clear here. I don't condone suicide. I don't. But from what I've learned and what I see is that if someone really wants to do it, it doesn't matter what you put in front of them. It doesn't matter how long you lock them up for. When they see an opportunity, they're going to take it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a sad state of affairs. It's one of those things where you got to look at life and say, yeah, you know what? As a community, as a mental health and addictions community, it comes down to a very simple equation. It's either you win some or you lose some. And once you wrap your head around that and you accept what you can tolerate, then you'll become a good healer.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about how the health system in Canada has a lot of bad parts, a lot of weak parts, a lot of failures, how it fails you, how it fails others. What do you feel they could improve in the health system in Canada? Is there anything specific?
Well, I'll be more specific than that, because we have the healthcare of Canada, we have the healthcare of provinces, we have the healthcare of municipalities. But I'm going to take it even a step further than that. My commentary comes from the mental health sector.
Mm-hmm.
So the very first thing that I would say is missing globally is a root system. So it's great that people said that through this process, it's been determined that through some type of scoring mechanism that you have complex PTSD. You don't have PTSD because you've exceeded that tolerance level and now you've graduated into complex PTSD. Same thing with dissociative identity disorder is, they run some test and it's all based on scoring. And then it's like, well, you come up with this number. So yes, we think you have DID. And, borderline, there's all these little tests that everyone does with
Mm-hmm.
algorithms and, equations that to layman's person means nothing. And I really think that, when it comes down to it, someone has to put like a grading system in place, taking all factors about mental illness, diagnostic, and put it and it's kind of like fire. We know how we have degrees of burns.
Mm-hmm.
Your first degree, second degree, third degree. Well, the same approach has to happen in mental health or mental illness as a whole globally. Is that there has to be some type of global standard that we can all say, okay, yes, you know what, you are a first degree mentally ill person. You fit into the second degree. You fit into the third degree. Because, like I said, my ex-therapist lacked training, and she was boxing way above her weight class for my DID, and and their governing bodies and different aspects of the mental health system, they like to play games, because my ex-therapist on her website, for example, I'll use her as an example. She said that she works with dissociation and works with parts work. Well, when you strip that away and you look at dissociative identity disorder, A, well, you're dissociated, and B, you have many parts that come out. However, in the system that Canada has, especially in Ontario, dissociation and parts work are different than DID.
Right.
And they're and so they're splitting hairs over, and this is, going back to my commentary, it's like the world's not complicated, it's the world's complex but not complicated. We make it complicated. So, and then the other thing that I would say that's missing from, at least in Ontario anyways, is a triage setup. So when I had my mental breakdown, I was left to my own devices. I had no idea how to engage mental illness. I didn't even know I was mentally ill, to be quite honest with you. Like I said, I buried everything. It was put away. And so, when I came through and I had a doctor tell me, maybe you should look into like some type of therapy or psychotherapy. Okay, sure. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know how to access the system.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I looked at that, it was like, okay, wow, it's like, I'm left to my own devices. I gotta go on web pages. I'm not well mentally, and so I had to Google and look at therapists within my region, and it's like whatever resonated with me is basically
right.
And so I found a therapist who's her background resonated with me. She was spiritual, but she wasn't associated to any organized religion, because I was brought up in organized religion, the hypocrisy of it all. My parents were good and the whole family presented themselves as good 1 day a week. Every Sunday,
yeah, you can
we showed up. We looked.
You can be spiritual without being churchy, and you can be churchy without being spiritual.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's how I entered the system, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a rocky start, and then once you get past the triage portion, I think there should be caseworkers behind that,
Mm-hmm.
who, and if you use the first degree, second degree, third degree models that I presented, then you'd have caseworkers for each of those degrees. So for example,
Right.
when I look at COVID right now, I'm a firm believer that the next pandemic will be mental illness, and I'm a firm believer that the current systems around the world, once that hits, once that begins to it's going to be multi-generational, and once that ball starts rolling, it's going to basically bury every mental health system around this world, on the globe, because we're not prepared for it. We're not set up for it. There's no global standardization on anything. And and I'm not saying that we need one glove fits all. No, like, mental illness is so unique to each individual. There's a lot of similarities, but they're all unique to that individual.
Mm-hmm.
And so these systems need to be deconstructed. They're heavy. They're heavy bureaucratic systems, and they need to be streamlined. They need structure, but they need structure that is modular in design, modular in deployment, because you might not have very many mental illness people in one part of your country, but you might have a pandemic blowing up in another part, and you should be really easy to say, okay, we'll take this team over here, just like the military. We take this team over here and we'll redeploy them over there. And you get paid from the same organization, but it's like, that's the thing. It has to be more structured, but it has to be agile enough and modular in design, so that it's easily scalable up, scalable back down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what's missing.
Yep. Well, and I think going back to the scoring part of it, if you have DID stage 3 or whatever, and you are looking at this therapist and it says DID stage 1, you know that that's not going to be a good fit. But with lack of that, it's hard to match up with someone who has the right level of capabilities versus what you're experiencing. I think that that would be a great thing to implement. And I think it would require a lot more testing and more
Absolutely.
rigorous.
People should be.
Yes, more rigorous requirements for some therapists and mental health providers. I think that that would have to be part of that.
Yeah. So I put it this way. So in Ontario, registered psychotherapists have their own college, and it's called the College of Registered Psychotherapy of Ontario, CRPO. Now, their whole mandate is set forth. It's advertised as to protect the interest of the public. What happened to me? I went to them, and they weren't interested at all in protecting my well-being. They spent more time protecting the therapist. And when you start thinking about it, how when you look at the court case, is like when you look at the court case, how does a registered psychotherapist how does her words supersede those of a forensic psychiatrist? That's the kicker,
right?
Forensic psychiatrist and medical doctor. I had two or three medical doctors, who go through rigorous training, who are attached to well-established colleges, and yet somehow their words meant nothing. So I mean, it was really backwards. It was just it was one of those. It was a head scratcher for sure. But I think if people can get on board with that grading system, like for example, I look at everyone with COVID, everyone experiencing what they call COVID stresses, anxiety, depression, stress, whatever you want to call it. And I think there's another one. There's four, I think, that most people complain about under COVID, what they're feeling. I look at that and I think, okay, well, you know what, that would be a stage one. That would be a stage one mental illness. Because I just want to put something in context for you, and that is when I spoke with my therapists, and I've been told by multiple people that even though I'm high functioning, my mental illness experiences are so far down the mental illness spectrum that the world's not ready for my story. And so what came out of that was I went to my therapist and said, is this valid commentary, or is this just people, trying to make me feel bad? And so my therapist and I we talked about this, and one of them put it into a context of here is the Richter scale, because everyone understands the Richter scale when it comes to earthquake. 0 is good, 9, 10 is really bad.
Right.
So the way they described it to me is that at my worst, I'm a high 8, low 9 on the Richter scale at my worst. The general public, they hover around a 2, 3, somewhere in that range. And if we're lucky, the mental health and addictions community, they may be able to sustain a 5, but not long term. We'll say short term, like maybe a year. After that, they won't be able to sustain it. And so that really opened my eyes when they put it in that perspective. It's like, wow, so 2 or 3, and here I am over like an 8 and 9. Like, that's a huge delta. And then when I start thinking about where the industry is, I mean, they're aiming for a 5, and then there's people like me, high functioning, and yet we're so mentally ill, that we've been institutionalized, and that's where there's a lot of misunderstanding. Is how can Victor be so mentally ill that he can hold a full-time job? He can, he has a long-term relationship with his wife over 25 years. He's got a family. How can he be so mentally ill? And so there's got to be different ways of approaching the how to remove the stigmatization of mental illness versus high function.
Yeah. So if you weren't doing what you do now, or if you had chosen a different path, what would you be doing instead? I know that you said you didn't take a full ride scholarship, so maybe it has something to do with that. But this is no limits, anything at all. What would you be doing if you weren't doing what you do now?
Oh, that's another good question. If I had my way, I mean, I would love to travel the world with my wife and experience the world. I'd like to go to, I would love to go to Tibet, India, the birthplace of middle or Eastern philosophies. I'd like to spend a lot of time there and just the culture experience. I mean, the Western world's not really cut up to it's landing flat on the promises that they tried to deliver.
Mm-hmm. So traveling, you think would be? Is your wife interested in traveling as well?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of the frustrating parts because of everything that's happened to me. Part of the issue is that I get a lot of anxiety when I go out because I mean, even though I pleaded guilty, which I don't have any recollection of ever doing, but because of that, I was handed down an 18-month probation sentence, but I was also handed a 3-year open-ended sentence. With that being said, it's really if anything happens to my ex-therapist, or if I get in trouble with the law, and this is valid until April 2022, if anything happens, they can reopen my case and put me in jail at any time they want. So that clouds over my head. Mm-hmm. And so what that does is it makes it a challenge for me to actually go outside. Simple things like walking around the block. My head's always on a swivel. When I drive, when I go out, if I have to go somewhere, my head's on a swivel. I know that when I see police vehicles, I clench my teeth quite hard and cracked a few other teeth doing so. And my jaw gets all locked up, and there's a lot of stress there, partly because of my experience with all the police brutality I've taken when I was a young child, and then as well as the police brutality I experienced as a mentally ill person. But I mean, and when you have that over your head, you don't know if they're coming for you or not. It kind of, and with someone who's got hypervigilance, and I've been hypervigilant since I've been, I would say 4 or 5 years old. Mm-hmm. So 45 years, my hypervigilance, my body armoring turned on. I don't know how to turn it off. And so just imagine, masseuses have a heyday with my back and my shoulder.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, well, it is time. Let me see if I can grab it. It's underneath something, so my hands are having a hard time grabbing it. But I normally have a wand that I use for this last question.
Uh-oh.
Here we go. Here it is. So this is the magic moment of the stream where I'm going to wave this magic wand and you get to eliminate one common opinion or misconception or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health. And you get to tell me what that is going to be. So I'm just going to magic wave here. And now you get to eliminate whatever you would like to eliminate. What would that be?
I would love to eliminate Hollywood's perception, interpretation on mental illness, on specifically DID, because DID doesn't make us a monster.
Yeah.
Doesn't make anyone a monster. Sure, there are terrible things about DID, but I always think about that movie Split, and I think, man, that movie's just so full of shit. But Hollywood sensationalizes mental illness, and likes to bring that perspective of their sensationalism into mainstream media, which then forms the opinions or influences the Luddites of the world, who aren't up to date on mental illness, who know nothing about
Mm-hmm.
mental illness. So, I really think if you want to go, if you want a movie that truly depicts semi close to what it's like to be mentally ill. I mean, look at One Flew Over the Cuckoo's. There's a fair representation of the whole spectrum of mental illness to a certain degree
Mm-hmm.
in one movie. From there, we've gone into, like I said, the whole splits, it's just all garbage. And the sad state is that it impacts the way people in regular society look at me or look at people like me with my diagnosis, and they treat us like we're or they think that we're monsters, and part of that too, is part of that too really happens to be how I feel when it comes to really what the mental health and addiction community, for the most part, not all of them, there's some good ones, but what they did in the Ministry of Attorney General did to me, they all pointed the finger from my ex-therapist through all the colleges and all the complaints pros, they all pointed a finger at me and called me a monster, vilified and demonized me. So I suppose if that's what they want, if they want a name call, then so be it. I'll throw this back at them, at the whole community. I guess that makes you my Dr. Frankenstein. It's fair game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I will open it up to the community to type in any more questions. If you have any questions for our guests, feel free to type them into the chat. And then if there's anything that while we're waiting, you feel like we didn't cover or that you want to talk about, that you want to throw out as far as resources or sites or personal recommendations, feel free to throw those out while we're waiting for some input from chat here.
Well, if there's any Canadians out there, I'll tell you right off the bat, stay away from CMHA, all levels. They're not who they claim to be. A real shame that our government has invested heavily in them at all levels. And for resources, that's a good one. Well, I mean, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm usually, there's a certain group that I follow, certain organizations that I follow that I use their resources. I think CPTSD Foundation. I think it's foundation.org. That's a good place to start. They've got a lot of good resources there. Who else would there be?
I did throw out a link to your Twitter again. So if anybody's not following, feel free to click on that link and go give them a follow.
Yeah, like, I mean, I've moved away from conventional therapies for the most part, except for if you're willing to try it, I say, go try prolonged exposure therapy. But like I said, it's not for everyone.
Yeah,
it's something that's going to hurt, but it's very effective. I will suggest following DBT. For the rest of the one, the CBT stuff, I tried some of it, didn't work for me, and so I don't want to put a negative comment on anything that could help someone else.
Absolutely.
But I mean, I do have negative comments for organizations and modalities that have hurt me based on everything that's happened. But
yeah, absolutely. Well, Bite Mark said, Victor, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. This has been a fascinating discussion. I look forward to hearing and reading more about your book. Yeah, for sure. If you do wind up writing a book or putting something out there, we'd love to hear about it. Most definitely.
Well, it's a work in progress. Like I said, I'm trying to work out the framework on how to get it out there, and I'm slowly going through 7 years of archived emails to find all the ones that my current circle of care have all sent back to me. Yeah, so I mean, I just got to figure out how to present it in a way that doesn't scare the shit out of the readers.
Yeah. I did follow on Twitter, but I'm only intermittently on there. That's okay. That's all right. Okay, well, if there are no other questions from the community, chat, give me just a minute to disconnect with our guests, and I will be right back. Probably going to play a little bit of Minion Masters, and we'll see how much my hands can take. I know I've been doing some weird things with my arms and hands today, just trying to keep them a little bit moving and a little bit from getting sore after surgery. So give me just a minute to disconnect with Victor, and I will be right back. And Victor, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me and giving me an opportunity to share the things I've learned and whatnot. So I'm honored. Many blessings.
That was such a powerful conversation, and I hope you got a lot out of it. Victor's story is intense, raw, and not always easy to hear, but that's exactly why it's so important. Living with CPTSD, DID, and BPD isn't just a series of symptoms on a page. It's a daily reality that shapes every interaction, every relationship, and every moment of life. One of the biggest takeaways from this episode is that mental health struggles don't fit into neat little boxes. Healing isn't a straight line, and there's no magic solution that suddenly makes everything better. What works for one person might not work for another, and sometimes the systems in place to help people end up doing more harm than good. If you've ever felt dismissed, misunderstood, or stuck in a system that doesn't actually see you, know that you are not alone. But here's the thing, just existing, making it through another day, is something to be proud of. It's okay if healing takes time. It's okay if you're still figuring things out. You don't have to have all the answers, and you don't have to do it alone. Whether it's through therapy, finding the right support network, or just taking life one step at a time, what matters is that you keep going. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to do a couple of things. First, share it with someone who might need to hear it. You never know who's struggling in silence and needs to feel seen. Second, if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future episodes. And finally, if you have a moment, leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. It helps the show reach more people, and it lets me know what's connecting with you. As always, I appreciate you for being here, for listening, and for taking the time to care about mental health. Yours, mine, and the people around you. Keep taking care of yourself, and I will catch you in the next one.